Hey everybody, it's Fat Man from the Holler. I want to decide to do a part 3, and if you like my videos, hit like and subscribe. This is just for fun. In the introduction in laptops, like I said in the previous videos, I worked on a lot of desktops, putting in video cards like AMD many years ago, Sound Blaster Pro, and a lot of that stuff wasn't so hard. But right here's your main board for the laptop. And then here's the component that makes the screen work. Here is the hard drive, the CD drive, as you can see. And here's more components that I've actually taken apart pretty successfully without destroying. And then here's the next piece right here. Here is the webcam. This is more components. Here's the fan, successfully taking out one piece without destroying it. And if you flip it over, it says brushless motor made in China. So doesn't that sound like it kind of reminds me of a DeWalt tool, brushless motor. Not the same thing, but probably a little bit similar in aspects of how it works. Here's more components, etc. More components, and I actually popped the battery out. And this battery is crucial for actually the computer. Battery dies, it keeps your time and date up. And the last part of this is something that is more of a tedious problem, and I'm probably most likely not going to be able to take it apart without breaking it. This is, instead of having a mouse, this is your pad for using your mouse on a laptop. And this thing, man, it's a little bit crazy. It's like glued in. I tried to break it loose, but it cracked that corner. I didn't want to do that. People always talking about there's gold in these and this and that. I'm not even doing it for that. I was just doing it for the capability of understanding how these guys work, which is pretty crazy. But there's a lot of components in there, and once you start looking through the components, made in China. As I'm sitting here taking this apart, and I know everybody has a fixation against China. It's really not China. China is actually revolutionary, and their ancient technology was far ahead of the Europeans. Not to be, it's nothing of bigotry as in sense, but and if you look at more of it, it's made in China, and I do understand a lot of the commodities of how China and everywhere is working, because in North Korea makes a lot of components for these computers, etc. And China has a manufacturer superpower of actually being able to massively produce products from a coffee pot to a laptop. And the thing is, I believe China sells the stuff at a competitive rate. The problem is the middleman America, places like Walmart, Best Buy, any place like that. And a lot of people want to blame the economy failure upon this. Some of the problems and inflation in the United States is based upon China. It's not really that. It's more of just the simple things I've talked about in different videos, cycle from the holler. A lot of people don't listen to it because they don't understand where I'm coming from, because I don't speak on it linguistically or articulately. But where this comes from is, it's not China's fault, because people like Sam Walton had to change his ad in the 90s, made in America, because I have friends that are older than me, they're in their 60s, they can remember going to almost any store. A lot of old cookware, knives, stuff was made in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, as I said, China, Taiwan, Malaysia, just all over the place. And the thing is, when it comes down into that part of what I'm doing, of just understanding that, it's not so much, none of us people in the world really want to fight with each other unless we just have a mentality of evil and we're malice about it. It's more of our governments. And I figure, in a real way, if the governments want to fight, why don't they just fight with each other? Don't try to destroy the whole world, to destroy the ecosystem and nature, because they have they have a Napoleon complex of sorts, and they also have utilized it to the fullest, like the Machiavelli, the book, The Prince, Machiavelli, the Prince. They use the deception, the rule, and his tyrant's way. And it's not to say all the government's bad and the government serves no purpose, but when it has a Napoleon complex and it operates by deception and it doesn't go by the Constitution and it uses corporate capitalism, a lot of people are not hip to it. And then the United States imposes their will by trying to singularly push American ways and values and ideas upon Middle Eastern countries or any country of the world. And anybody has children, guess what? Not everybody wants their 13-year-old daughter dressed up with makeup and doing nasty stuff, jumping around with her little bitty breasts moving and having a bunch of nasty perverts hitting on them and stuff. It's pretty sick. I mean, there's probably people out there that distort their own children, and it's a fact there is. But I try to personally not go that route. But that's just a little nutshell of understanding. Always understand bigger categories of how things work, and sometimes it offends. It's not to offend. It's just a observational perception that I have, and I do it with an open mind where I'm not going to be a bigot or use anti-Semitism or be against any nation, because I love all cultures, and my fascination is Latin culture, Asian culture, the Cherokee Indians, because I am Cherokee, Viking history of how they came from Sweden, Norway, and then they came into the United Kingdom and Ireland and stuff. And we're all kind of basically the same thing. And then sometimes I'll watch Ancient Aliens, and we can take it into a little fictional thing, and it's not really pertaining to the video, but it's more, it'll touch base back to it. And I listen to Ancient Aliens, and a lot of that stuff is more of, if there's all kinds of different people, then maybe there's all kinds of different aliens, and they use some kind of DNA of their self, and that's how we have multiple races of people. But then that still like makes people mad, because it seems like bigotry. Well, I'm pretty sure if the aliens did that, there's multiple kinds of them, and it's not blasphemy at God. It's just a concept. It's an idea. I mean, I believe there's a creator of all things, and the thing is, I mean, even Stephen Hawking, I've listened to him. He said he does not believe in God. He didn't believe in God because he believed gravity created the universe and everything, and I just don't see that. That's just not. I mean, I understand gravity and the purposes of physics and how the Big Bang Theory and the combustion and the imploding of everything crashing together. And I mean, it's kind of like, I understand what a single cell organism is and how evolution it gained more cells and stuff. Is it because something that's living, it'll eventually adapt and it'll have evolution. Like they say, the original humans only had 4 fingers, and then evolution they have 5 fingers. I've actually read a lot of stuff, but like I said in other videos, I've had heat stroke. I've been in a coma, and I've had some tremendous things that cause personal problems of head trauma. So sometimes when I say things, it's not to offend, or it's not that I'm not well read enough to say it properly. It's just I forgot, or I remember pieces of it, and I don't remember every single analytical part of what I'm speaking of. It's not because I'm dumb. It's just because I have head trauma, and I'm not able to retain things like other people. So this is just a little more than just computers, because I take things. This is like a religious thing for me, because a lot of people talk about their spirit. My spirit likes to create, fabricate, do things, have hobbies, ambitions, and passions, and read, explore the world, journey, travel, personal growth, and just understanding the cosmos. There's just more to life than just the hustle and bustle and the mutiny of a nation that's being led by wolves that harvest the sheep as they see fit. And it's not really trying to hate the government. I love the United States and the people in it, and a lot of our values and the freedoms we have, even though freedoms is kind of a non-existent thing, or a lot of it's paid privileges, like paid privileges to drive. To drive, you have to have you have to take a written test has to be acquired to get a written test to understand the rules of the road, and then a driving test to show that you actually know how to use the rules of the book and you know how to incorporate them into driving safely and following and obeying the laws. I understand that. But parts of it, you have to pay for the written test, you have to pay for the driving test, you have to have a car insurance, tags, and there's a lot more to everything than just one thing. And that's kind of the greatest thing that I've had from my trauma is I have PTSD and anxiety, and that stuff never ends. So what I've done is a self-help method for my personal growth is I incorporate it when I do things like this right here, how it never ends. I'll sit here and work with this stuff for till the cows come home, and I'll study the board, and like every part of the board, it's almost like the Matrix if you look at it. It all has numbers and all has classifications how every single component works. And this nanotechnology is more advanced than most technology because if you look at it, just it will blow your mind how teeny the solder is in it. If you look at the soldering of it, it's a little out of frame where you can't see it with the phone, but the soldering and everything is so teeny and micro complex. There's almost no way a human can massively produce these without having a CNC machine with a robotic arm to complete making the circuit board and adding all the components of functionability. And I mean, I'm pretty big into CNC machines for a long time. I was kind of, when I was younger and I was a blind American, I didn't understand so much how other countries can massively produce stuff, but I do now. There's CNC router machines, there's CNC plasma cutters, there's everything in the world. There's all CNC embroidery machines for doing stitching and logos and screen printing. And there's many different forms of massively producing something. The problem is for China is a lot of people will just try to tear China apart because they're just a little closed-minded and they believe what the government says, which is very naive. But the problem is China might be making a lot of money. From my personal experience of having friends from China, and I will never hate on a nation or people's situation, but I have friends from China who have immigrated from China to America. They told me stories of working in factories and family and decades of many people they're friends with working in the factories. And I mean, this was within the last 5 years. The people who work in the factories of all ages get $60 a month, and $60 a month is living high for them. It's enough. It's enough money for them to take care of their families, have food, and I mean, China is like so vast. These people, they told me, they showed me, like I showed them my grandmother's dresser, and they said, well, in China, there's places where people basically like live in dressers where like because everything's so small and congested because China is actually very intensely articulate and utilizing space and time and everything they have, and they're an industrial leader in the world. It's just the Xpeng thing and the Kim Un Lee and the Putin and the communist aspect. That's pretty negative way of their mentality of the control system they have. And I mean, I understand communism because you had Joseph Engels and Karl Marx. They wrote the book, The Communist Manifesto. It was produced around the time America was having the American Civil War from the North and the South. And the thing is, by after the book was written many years later, there's another book and movie and stuff that's talking about the fall of eagles, where the Romanov family, the czars of Russia, they was killed. And then if you watch Unsolved Mysteries, which is very old, they talk about Anastasia. A woman in Michigan was saying she was Anastasia, and Anastasia was part of the royal family, and she escaped, and she jumped off a bridge in France or something, and people found her. There's a lot of fabrication, because I actually study history quite well. I'm not really a mathematical genius or anything of that nature, or use proper grammar or sentence structure or any of that. But I do understand science and I understand civics of demographics and world history, and what Russia and Great Britain did to create a friendship, and many nations did this. This is something past tense. A lot of nations would typically a daughter and son, a daughter of one nation, a son of another nation, they would marry, and what that would do before we have new business where we deal with each other, it created a commodity where the nations was linked together and the grandchild was a part of both worlds, so it gave them a prosperity of being doing business and preventing war and a lot of things like that, because two's always stronger than one. And so I mean, I'm probably the most boringest guy in the world, and I've actually thought about going back to school and becoming a teacher because I enjoy teaching and I understand things in a spiritual way, in a philosophy. Because if just like making content on YouTube, not everybody is going to watch the full video. I'm not going to be able to retain, but to be very good at it, you have to have, like YouTube, you can have a good thumbnail, a good title, description, and if you're articulate and you can use linguistic speaking and speak very cleanly, almost to the point it sounds like open AI, you're going to retain a lot of your viewers. And then when the video starts getting longer, then some people are going to find, if they find offense in it or it's not enjoyable and it's just dry gibberish, everybody's going to be not with that. I have a sense of humor and I kind of laugh at it because that's kind of the way I am sometimes. Sometimes there's videos I'll know about and I can watch like 30 seconds of it and then I'll skip through the video, and if I'm not liking the content or what they're doing, or find fault or errors of what they're doing, then I'll just not watch it. And then usually what I do is I go critique it, and I'll post my own perception and observation upon Facebook. But typically I'm not doing that no more because I'm not giving myself away like that no more. I'm more into writing books and leveling up in 2023. And there's several videos I know that I've posted on YouTube and my music and it offends people, but it's not meant for that. It's more of an entertainment perception. It's what I feel. It's what I see out of my eyes. It's just my view of the world. It's not no derogatory words or racism or anti-Semitism or bigotry of harming, molesting people financially, physically, mentally. I'm not like that. It's just people will have their own assumption of a person based on their own feelings. And if it's something they strongly do not like, they're strongly going to tell you, if not threaten you, cuss you, and do all kinds of malice things of the sorts. Because that's just the way people are. And it's just like, it's part of cognitive development and neuroscience, and I understand it. It's just it's an act of nature. It's fight or flight, and I understand it because that's part of PTSD and anxiety. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap this video up. And if you guys have followed the video to the very end of it, I soulfully wish to thank you, because feel free to comment, hit like, and subscribe, and all that good stuff, and ring that bell for future content. This is just me, my perceptions, observations, and I find my spirit and my power, and I feel much better personal growth about myself when I do things like this. I'm just sharing my journey, my experience in my life with everyone. You can take it or leave it, but that's okay because there's many options on YouTube. But much love as always. Try to enjoy the rest of your weekend. I hope everybody who's watched this video to this point has a very good week as we go into the work week and the children are going to school, and everybody stay safe. Much love as always.